Welcome to episode 20 of the Cybersecurity Happy Hour podcast. I am your host, Christie, and the topic of today's podcast is the insider threat. I'm just going to be examining what exactly the insider threat is, especially when it comes to an organization. So we've got the keyword, the insider. So there's a threat that comes from inside your organization. But I'm going to actually use a formal definition. Now, NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, they have a special publication. And this special publication is the 800-53. And it gives the definition of what an entity is basically, or what a threat is an entity without authorized access that has the potential to harm an information system or enterprise through destruction, disclosure, modification of data, or denial of service. This insider threat could be intentional, i.e. was planned, or accidental. So an employee would probably accidentally expose data or deliberately expose data, company confidential information. Why is this critical? The reason why it's critical is because each employee the employee would have been in a company. Remember, the employee is the insider threat. I just need to mention that. The employee is the insider threat. And the permanent employee is one of the insider threats. Now, the permanent employee knows all about your organization. They would have worked there for a few years or even a couple of months. So they understand all the strengths and the weaknesses of the organization. They would have probably undergone training. So they would obviously understand, they would have probably witnessed any malicious attacks, either phishing. They would probably have access to some confidential information. So they have that insider knowledge. But an external entity, which could be a hacker, they need to do the reconnaissance. So that's the difference. They won't just attack. Some do, but they have to do the homework. Compared to an employee, a permanent employee especially, that knows the organization already, they know the strengths and weaknesses. Although I have mentioned that the insider threat could be a permanent employee, however, it could also be a consultant. Consultants come to organization to do maybe a piece of work for a certain period of time, and it could be from a week to months. However, they're given credentials, and during that time, the consultant, would become familiar with the organization. So what? So it could be a consultant. It could be, who else could it be? It could be a business partner, okay? Or it could be an ex-employee, someone that's probably worked for the organization and left. All right, let me cite some past incidents that's happened. Now, you may remember Marriott International Hotel. So this is going back to 2019, and they were fined 123 million. And what did they do? They leak the data of nearly 400 million guests in the UK. So over a period of time, they would have collected this data. So a lot of people stayed over the years and collected the data. But the data that were collected, now what was the cause of this data leakage? So I said up to 400 million hotel guests. Well, it was basically, what it claims is be poor monitoring. So poor monitoring of it could even be poor monitoring of access. Who has access to that data? But let me choose my words carefully. It's just that this could have been prevented. So If the proper monitoring were in place using various tools, automated or manual, then this could be prevented, and they would have secured that would have prevented these internal threats. So I didn't mention that an organization must have, I use the word must have, ongoing monitoring. Now ongoing monitoring will keep the administrators abreast, or not just administrators, or those responsible for threat hunting within the organization. Now, the key things that typically an analyst would look out for example, if an employee, for example, is sending out information to a third party, external third party, okay? So that's one of them. And when I say sending information, could be via email. So not just a one-off, it could be a one-off or it could be constant. A lot of they can do, if they request huge amount of, or they actually request, or let's say they're reviewing huge amounts of data. Now the tricky part is that it might be part of their job. But what we're looking for, yes, let's say they will have a need to know, but we're looking for something that's abnormal. Let's say, yes, it's part of the job, and typically when they access the data, they will access it, let's say, for 30 minutes. However, what has been recorded is that this employee has been visiting that data periodically. So let's say every half an hour. Then that's an unusual behavior. That should raise a red flag. Another indicator could be if an employee, and remember, I'm using the word employee loosely, could be the consultant, also requesting information, especially confidential or sensitive information that's not related to the work. So it's not related to the day-to-day job. Again, that should raise a red flag. If they are using, let's say, storage devices, so if they use external hard drive, and that means they're probably copying data to those drives. But the problem really shows that you haven't got preventative measures in place. So that is something of a concern. Now, all that I've listed, your monitoring, your technical monitoring should be able to pick that up. Another thing that that indicates a threat from these, that indicates an insider threat, is looking at the behavior of the employee. Has there been a change in their behavior? Now, for example, let me just look one. Let's say they were completely satisfied a few months ago, or years, all of a sudden they're getting angry and making complaints. Now, some complaints might be justified, but sometimes, if once the complaint has been addressed, but they're still angry for a reason, and typically sometimes some of this is due to maybe they bypass for promotion. So that could trigger a change in behavior, which could lead to anger. Okay. What else could they do? If they usually turn up at the office, they're supposed to work for, let's say, from 9 to 5, okay, and they turn up, let's say, at 7 a.m. Now, nothing wrong with that, okay? You know, we want staff to be eager, but then when it becomes unusual, especially the person has a pattern for turn up at 9 o'clock, you know, as if they're working on a project, they have to be in early, that's different. But if the person is normally, let's say, a person that comes in on maybe 9 o'clock, or usually, you know, they're usually late. All of a sudden, they are coming in early. We must investigate the cause. Why is that? Secondly, or thirdly, I would say, is that if the employee, maybe they were disgruntled, or maybe not, then they're talking about leaving the organization. Okay, nothing wrong with that, but they're publicly saying, let's say in the coffee, I'm leaving, this company is rubbish, and they have access to confidential, sensitive information, and is a constantly moaning in public, when I say in public, within the organization, and they will complain to anybody willing to listen, and that is a red flag here. Or sometimes, I'm going to give another example, maybe the employee comes into work looking disheveled. This is a person that used to dress quite smartly, and they're looking disheveled, or they're acting, or they used to be quite talkative, and all of a sudden they're acting as if they've gone very quiet. There's been a change in behavior. I mean, that needs to be investigated as well. Do not forget to Protect your data in transit and maintain your privacy by using our affiliate link for NordVPN. So get NordVPN. However, you need to use the coupon code INTECHCYBER. And what do you get for using this coupon code? You get 70% off a 3-year plan plus 1 month free. So I'm going to just repeat that. Okay, get NordVPN. You want to protect your data in transit. You want to make sure it's encrypted so that hackers cannot read your data. Get NordVPN using our code INTECHCYBER, and you get 70% off a 3-year plan plus 1 month free. Now, what are the consequences of an insider attack? So if this insider threat is realized, that means if this threat actually happens, i.e. an employee deliberately publishes sensitive information over the internet because they're disgruntled for one reason or another, what could be the consequence? Or even publish supply information, okay? Now, consequences could be, there are many, but I'm just going to mention a few. The company's reputational damage. Okay, so of course, if the company's that threat will be published in the media, and obviously the organization will not look good. Okay, so reputational damage, which it can be very hard to quantify initially, but it can cost organizations millions of pounds or dollars. So the reputation will be ruined. And of course, fines. Okay. So we're in the UK, GDPR, that organization will be fined heavily. Okay. Because they did not adequately secure either customer or employee information. Then you put the adequate controls in place. So huge fines. And sometimes the consequence of those fines could mean a business closure. You might say, okay, they should have insurance. But if they're negligent, the insurers may not pay, right? Suppliers and customers will lose trust in that business, in that organization. They will not trust them, so they'll move elsewhere. Okay. The organizations probably let's say if they've got a secret source. Let's say they've got a secret source that needs protected. If that's out in the wild, I should say. If the trade secret has been disclosed, then of course, other companies can replicate it at a cheaper rate. All right. The big picture, if that organization is part of let's say the stock market, all right, then as soon as the news gets to the media or is published that the organization did not adequately secure the data and was due to an insider attack, then there's a likelihood that the share prices will drop. So these are some of the consequences of an insider attack. All right, what can an organization do to mitigate against this insider threat? You can say train staff to prevent errors and omissions that could lead to a breach of some sort. Each employee must have a need to know. So we want to make sure that they'll only have access to enough information for them to do their job. The principle of least privilege. You only give enough access to do your job. Okay? Enough IT access. Okay? Or system access. And no more. And that access must be continually monitored. Okay? We monitor it to prevent abuse, even if they're administrators as well. Other things that could mitigate against this risk is by, let's see, if you have USB drives, make sure that users can have access, even if they put the USB thumb drive, if they put the USB or external hard drive, it is actually blocked. So we want to prevent employees from transferring data into other sources, into portable hard drives, for example. Now, one solution that is advisable is having some kind of monitoring, technical monitoring in place. So have some kind of solution in place to monitor things like access controls, who has access to what, having some kind of technology so that you can, if any unusual behavior or unusual access will raise a red flag, and someone, or administrator, for example, will be alerted to trigger further investigation. And also possibly not just trigger, maybe access can be that person's access can be temporarily disabled for pending further investigation. Okay, so there's quite a few, but these are just the main ones. Okay, so to conclude this, the impact really of an insider threat can be quite catastrophic. But however, it is very, very preventable if we use automated tools. We have a lot of cybersecurity automated tools and monitoring tools in place to alert and prevent. So that is advice. I've not mentioned any tools. I'm trying to make it a little bit more independent, but there are many tools out there, fantastic tools that are affordable to help mitigate these risks. I would like to thank you once again for listening to this podcast. You can contact me at our Instagram, cybersechappy, or you can send at admin@intexit.co.uk, where we can support you with any of these topics that I have discussed. Until next time, thank you for listening.